Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. Today is once again interview day, and I am joined, as I typically am with interviews, by a special guest. Special guest, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Diane Billas. I'm a queer YA author of two books. I have debut sapphic novel called Does Love Always Win? And my YA superhero book is called Superficial, and that's coming out September 24th.
Yeah, okay. That's actually I'm yet to figure out the actual release schedule, but that'll be 10 days after after the release of this video. So be sure to be on the lookout for that, uh, future prospective audience. Before we go any deeper into the interview, I want to know: is there anything you don't want to talk about when over the course of this over the course of the interview? Is there any topic you would rather avoid?
Hmm. Not that I can think of.
Okay. If something comes up that troubles you, be sure to let me know and I'll get over it. Now, you already mentioned that you had your debut novel, "Does Love Always Win?" I have to ask, did you start writing with that novel, or did you have other written words before that, other written works?
So I had another book that I wrote before Does Love Always Win? It was an adult romance,
Okay.
and it was kind of based on a lot of things that happened to me in my life. Um, But when I was querying it, I wasn't getting any interest from anyone, the agents or small presses or anything. Uh, so as I was querying that, I started writing Does Love Always Win? And I wrote that because I like to read a lot of young adult books, and I noticed that there weren't as many sapphic romances at the time. So I decided to start that while I was querying the other book, just to get my hopes up that maybe something will work out. And then I ended up ultimately shelving my first book.
Okay. I actually meant to ask you a little bit more about your first book. Are there any plans for for it in the future? Do you intend to do anything else with it?
I might, if I go back to it, it'll probably just have to get changed a lot. I learned a lot of things. As I was writing this Love Always Win about the querying process and what kind of like what sticks with people. So the romance part didn't happen until like the second part of my book. So I think I'd have to like reconfigure it to the romance or like the love interest to appear sooner. So maybe there might be plans for it, but not anytime in the near future.
If you don't mind me shilling a little, I've been thinking about debuting my services as a developmental editor. So if you're still interested in working through that, maybe we can maybe we can arrange something.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay. Um, Next question: what inspired you to create uh, your first book?
Like so growing up, I never really had any queer books available to me, and I didn't realize I was queer until college. So I feel like I had more books growing up that I saw myself in. I might have understood and seen myself better. So that was like the one of the main reasons I wrote Does Love Always Win?
Okay. Um, and I also want to ask this question now about your about your shelf book. So, what are its backgrounds?
That one, I had just gotten out of a traumatic relationship with a, a person who emotionally abused me. Um, and I kind of like I needed to heal from it. So some some of those feelings and thoughts kind of went into it's called 1 minute at a time. And I also had just come back from an Australian adventure, so I kind of like meshed all of that together. So the main character is trying to heal from a bad relationship and goes off to Australia to find herself.
Okay. Good to know. So, when it comes to your creative process, are you a character first or are you a setting first kind of offer?
I I am usually a pantser. So I actually just start writing from the beginning, um, and don't really. I usually have an idea of the setting and the main character, and then just start writing and see what happens. And then after that, I start to build the characters and the setting. But mainly, so I have the idea, then the characters, and then the setting.
Okay. Uh, Thank you. Do you have any and how exactly do you intend to fit those together? Do you go by vibe, by mood, or do you notice stuff like, I don't know, symbolism, and and try to connect it based on, based on that.
I definitely do the vibes of like the characters and like what they're like. And a lot of the settings that I make are in, so I live in Pennsylvania in the United States. So a lot of the settings, actually, all of my settings so far have been in this area. Um, so I kind of like take take it from there. Things that I know.
Uh, yeah, I couldn't help but notice that as well.
I'm sure.
uh, Next question. For now on, I think I'm gonna refer mostly to "Does Love Always Win" because I think that is more relevant to to your career so far. Namely, you said you were a pantser, so I expect that not everything you put on page actually made it to the final product. So, are there any deleted scenes, so to speak, things that you
There
wrote
are
down for the
quite a
book, but
few.
okay. Any in particular
Uh,
you'd like to highlight?
Sure, there's one where Christy, who's the love interest in the story, they're at her beach house that she shares with her parents and her aunt. She comes back, they come back to the beach house, and Christy finds her parents there, and her parents had already just disowned her, so she was there with her aunt. So it's kind of like a whole showdown with her parents. But that ended up getting deleted because the story was just too long at that time.
Okay. I kind of want to ask if you I'm gonna ask if you would ever think about having like an extended edition where where you include maybe that scene, maybe a few others, um, into that book, so to speak. But then again, that's a broader question about the nature of um, about the nature of the industry, so to speak, and about how and about the commercialization. One could even call it capitalization uh, of the written word. But nevertheless, if that if that opportunity would arise for you, a would you actually take advantage of it, and b uh, would you include that scene or any others?
Yeah, if I had the opportunity, that would be really cool because I was really sad to delete, as most people would be, scenes from their stories, especially scenes that they really like. But I made sure to save all the scenes just in case, because you never know when you might be able to use them again. And some other scenes that I deleted that are a little bit more spicy, that I ultimately decided maybe they shouldn't be in like a YA novel. So I could always have an extended edition, like After Dark or more new adult or something.
That was gonna be my suggestion as well. Okay, now now we have the flip side to that question. From deleted scenes, from things you wanted to include but ended up not doing so, to things you maybe reluctantly included but ended up ended up enjoying. Or I imagine during the process you weren't always in love with everything that came out, but uh, so. Uh, so I think the question here is there anything that you initially considered cutting that you ended up that you decided to keep instead?
Actually, no. Everything in there is what I wanted to be in there. So I was able to my publisher didn't have any big suggestions of anything that needed to be cut or put in that I didn't agree with. So I'm happy with the way it turned out, despite some of the scenes being missing.
Okay. Um, Now, as we all know, and as we have already discussed, writing is a process, and like all processes, there are there are certain steps that need to be taken, and those steps, you know, some of these steps appeal to some people more than most, and and vice versa, depending on the depending on the actual process itself. Here, I'm talking specifically about the creation aspect of the process and various, and the various constituent parts of it. Is what is there? Is there any, is there any part of writing your book that that you find uh, dreadful or difficult, or something that when you are confronted with having to carry it out, you're not very enthusiastic about.
I think editing for me is my least favorite part of creating a novel. I love the first draft because you just never know what can come out. But then, like with the refining part, is just more of a slog. I'd rather just be writing.
Okay, and in terms of content, uh, what is it that what is it that you're uh, least excited about including or about having to figure out?
Mm, content. I'd say probably more like logistical things or having to like have them have classes or like the different classes that they're at, like physics or stuff like that when I'm writing the young adult books. I think that doesn't excite me as much as more like the plot and the drama.
Okay. Now going to the flip side, is there any part of the is there any part of the process or of the content creation itself that you find particularly uh, particularly engaging, particularly interesting, something that you find uh, that you find the most fun?
Uh, I really just like start like when I have a story and like it's in my head and I just want to write it. That's my favorite part. It's just in the beginning of when like any possibility could happen.
Okay, so that's the general process. But what about from a content perspective?
Um, so I like the parts about So and Does Love Always Win, things that I had liked in high school, such as like being a newspaper club or marching band, and putting in like a little details of things that maybe could have happened when I was in high school, and just relating it to my life.
Okay, now we're gonna move progressively away from the content of books and start talking about the actual publishing process itself. Namely, with with does love always win? What was your intention behind behind working towards getting that published?
Sure. So I had originally started querying agents in 2019, and I wasn't having any luck at all. So it was in the beginning of 2020, like right as the pandemic was hit. I wrote a blog post about just how my manuscript wasn't being picked up at all, and I actually had an editor friend reach out to me and say, "I'll help you with the manuscript." So I took it down and rewrote a lot of the scenes, no, just the whole manuscript in general. We just like tore through it, and then went back to try to find an agent, and still wasn't having too much luck with that. So I had some friends with small presses. So I decided to try my hand at seeing if a small press would be interested. I actually had a couple request fulls of Does Love Always Win? And then then Creative James Media is the one that I had eventually had gone with.
Okay, was that always your intention, going through small presses, or did other options come up? Did you consider other options?
So so I had originally wanted to go with like traditional publishing, a larger publisher with an agent. But since that didn't seem like it was going to be an option at the time, since I couldn't find an agent, I decided I didn't want to shelf this book. I felt strongly about it, but in self-publishing, I just wasn't ready to do that myself. So I thought good in between could be in small press.
Okay. Um, Next aspect. I'm pretty sure you had your own ideas when it came to, when it came to getting your book published. As you were going through that process, did you find that any of your uh, personal ideas about publishing have been proven, have been either proven or disproven?
It's the publishing process is a lot different than I had no idea what to expect since obviously I've never been published before. Um, but obviously it takes longer and it's a long process. And it's a lot of rereading your book many times. So you gotta love your story because you're gonna read it a million times.
Can confirm.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. I know you're currently working on you're currently working on superficial or are getting you're getting that promoted, and so maybe my current question is could be directed more towards that of how have the arcs been received so far? Has there any or have you had any difficulties or issues in terms of communicating your you know your book your uh, or your artistic ambitions towards your potential audience?
Yeah, so the arcs have actually been very favorable, the reviews that have been coming in so far. So I'm really excited about that. Superficial is very different than Does Love Always Win? So I am a little not sure about because I have my marketing platform. I have a lot of sapphic book lovers, and Superficial is not a sapphic book. So I think I'm just starting to try to reach a different market and trying to figure out ways to do that because this is a superhero story. The main character is she's pansexual and demisexual, but she ends up falling for a guy in the story, and it's not really mainly about the romance. It's more about the action and adventure that happens in it.
Okay. Uh, Now that you mentioned that you're in touch with sapphic book clubs, I mean to ask if after Does Love Always Win, you've gone perhaps back through the market and looked at more like sapphic romances because you've been talking about how those were missing within your atmosphere, or you didn't catch up on a lot of them. Have you since been able to look into that, look into that corner a little bit more distinctly?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially like as I was writing Does Love Always Win, more were popping up like left and right, which is awesome. And I've been connecting with a lot of sapphic authors and been able to read a lot of sapphic books. So that's been great. I'm actually my first draft of a sapphic murder mystery I'm writing too. So I'll still write sapphic things, but also I don't want to corner myself in because I like to write various topics.
Okay. Uh, Next up, how many of the people you would call close? So you can interpret that as you wish: family, friends, caretakers, etc. How many of them know that you're know that you're a writer? And of those that do, how did they respond to that?
Uh, so everyone in my family, everyone close to me knows that I'm a writer. Um, I think they mainly just they would ask a lot for like, how's it going with your book? Is it getting published and different things like that. But they all seem pretty excited. And when Does Love Always Win came out, they would come to my book launch. They bought my book, promoted on social media, so they're very supportive.
Hmm. That's nice. Okay. Um, Now the question I have now is one I'm going to split for for the purposes of this interview. Uh, I'm sure that Does Love Always Win was a very was very much a learning experience when it came both to writing it and to getting it published. Have you incorporated any of the lessons from Does Love Always Win within the process of getting superficial written and published?
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a learning process. Going through like the galleys, one of the final versions of Death Level was when I was just finding some things like left and right that I hadn't noticed. So I made sure to pay particular attention in the Word document before it got to the galleys for superficial, so I wouldn't have to keep finding things at the last minute. That's just like one of the ways.
Okay. Um, Now I have to ask uh, because I'm pretty sure superficial also provided some level of learning expertise, and you said you already have other projects ongoing. Uh, what would you say you would do differently, uh, wi- differently with your upcoming projects that you haven't been able to or haven't thought of doing with your first two?
I'm gonna get different, like maybe expand my beta readers. Um, to different I want to make sure I have some authors and readers involved and have a couple more. For superficial, I didn't have as many as I probably should have because I didn't have as much time because that one has been under contract with my publisher. So for my next project, I don't have any deadlines or anything like that. So I have more time and freedom to get people and to get feedback.
Okay. Now, the next point, we're almost done. But before I go, I'd like to know, of all the questions I have asked you, are there any you would want me to answer?
Hmm. What's your favorite part about? Do you like the of the writing process? Um,
There are two parts I could name here: action and dialogue. I'm I'm pretty good with both, and I have a lot of fun writing both. I've had uh, you know beta readers and such say that they've also enjoyed those aspects of my books, and I think I've been uh, quite effective at figuring out uh, uh, how people respond to various situations, because in many ways that's what both action and dialogue actually are, responses to situations. And yeah, and I can safely say that done a I've done a pretty good job at mapping those aspects of my characters out to the point where to the point where writing stuff like this is very rewarding in general. And yeah, that's my
that's great.
yeah. Okay, thank you. That's my answer. And now, last but not least, is there any link or platform you would want to shout out before we close out? So if you want to mention where people can find you, talk about people who you think are worth recommending, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. So my website is dianebillas.com. Has all my books on it. My You can sign up for my newsletter there and my blog. And I'm also on almost all of the socials, Twitter and TikTok. I'm at Diane Billas, and then on Instagram and Threads, I'm Diane Billas Writes. And well, one of my favorite indie authors is Mariah Stillbrook. We're at the same publisher, and she has two great books out right now. One is called In the Pines. It's an adult witchy read, and also The Lost Irvine. It's a fantasy book, and she's also has a YA horror coming up called Hall of Shadows. So that's one of the authors that I recommend.
Okay. I'm gonna need you to send me a link to her stuff over DMs, so I'll be able to include it. And
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say that was the last of the questions, and we're pretty much done with the interview now. Congratulations, you've survived.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to everyone who's been patient enough to watch us uh, stammer through our little exchange. Your eyes and your eyes on this video are very welcome, not just from me but also from my esteemed guest. Uh, Assuming you've enjoyed this interview, well then please like the video. Not really sure what not really sure what side is gonna be the correct one when when it comes to time to upload the video. So I'm gonna put it both like this. So again, please like the video and maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If you have anything to add about my guest or about anything she said, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, which by the way will be a review of Superficial, so get ready for that.
Ooh.
Yeah. Um, well then, please subscribe, and ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My books, the first of my own Heir to the Empire series, The Next Generation and The Path Not Taken, are available at various book retailers under their respective master links in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. Additionally, I have a Patreon where, depending on the level at which you pledge, you will receive various perks, the specifics of which I will allow you to discover for yourselves. I also have a second channel where I talk about things not related to books or literature, because yeah, I also have interests aside from those. And uh, and yeah, those are mainly also media related, like shows, movies, games, some stuff like that. Um, and if none of those sound, if you want to, if you want more from my stuff, then you can stay on. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on books and literature topics, then you can stay on this channel and go for my extensive backlog of book reviews, writing advice, and the occasional interview, just like this one. And if none of those interest you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want with the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was all I had to say. Until next time, I'm Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.